The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse as Michael Harrison sat alone in his home office, staring at the security monitor feed. What he was about to discover would change everything he thought he knew about love, sacrifice, and the true meaning of family. But to understand the depth of this moment, we need to go back to where it all began. 6 months earlier, Michael's world had been turned upside down. His wife Sarah had passed away in a car accident, leaving him to raise their 7-year-old son Tommy alone. Tommy had been born blind, and Sarah had been his everything. She had learned Braille, studied child development for visually impaired children, and dedicated her entire life to making sure Tommy felt loved, capable, and confident despite the challenges he faced. Michael, a successful tech entrepreneur worth over $50 million, suddenly found himself drowning in responsibilities he had never had to handle before. His business empire demanded his attention during the day, but Tommy needed constant care, patience, and specialized attention that Michael simply didn't know how to provide. The guilt was eating him alive. After going through 17 different nannies in 4 months, each one lasting only a few days or weeks, Michael was desperate. Some quit because they found caring for a blind child too challenging. Others seemed more interested in his wealth than his son's well-being. One even had the audacity to suggest that Tommy should be sent to a special boarding school so he wouldn't be such a burden. That's when Maria Rodriguez walked into their lives. Maria was a 34-year-old woman from San Antonio, Texas, who had moved to New York City 3 years earlier. She had worked as a special education teacher for 8 years before becoming a private caregiver. During their interview, she didn't ask about salary, vacation time, or benefits. Instead, she asked about Tommy's favorite activities, his daily routine, and what made him laugh. When Michael introduced her to Tommy, something magical happened. Tommy, who had become withdrawn and quiet since his mother's death, actually smiled when Maria spoke to him. She had a warm, gentle voice with a slight Texas accent that seemed to put him at ease immediately. Michael hired her on the spot, offering her a generous salary of $85,000 per year, full benefits, and her own guest suite in the penthouse. He thought money could solve any problem, and he was willing to pay whatever it took to ensure Tommy was well cared for. For the first few weeks, everything seemed to be going smoothly. Tommy appeared happier, he was eating better, and he had stopped having the nightmares that had plagued him since Sarah's death. Michael was finally able to focus on his work without constantly worrying about his son. But as the months passed, Michael began to notice small things that didn't quite add up. Maria never seemed to spend the generous allowance he provided for Tommy's activities and needs. When he checked the household accounts, he saw that she was using far less money than previous nannies, even though she was clearly taking excellent care of his son. He also noticed that Maria never took time off. She had worked 7 days a week for 6 months straight, never once asking for a break or vacation time. When he offered her a paid vacation, she politely declined, saying she preferred to stay with Tommy. Then there was the matter of her own room. Michael had furnished the guest suite with expensive furniture and amenities, but whenever he passed by, it looked barely lived in. Sometimes he wondered if she was even sleeping there. His curiosity grew when he started overhearing conversations between Maria and Tommy. Through the baby monitor in Tommy's room, he would catch snippets of their interactions. Maria wasn't just caring for Tommy, she was actively teaching him things that went far beyond typical nanny duties. She was helping him learn to navigate the apartment using counting steps and landmarks. She was teaching him to organize his toys and clothes in ways that made sense to him. Most importantly, she was constantly encouraging him to be independent and confident. The breaking point came on a rainy Thursday evening in November. Michael had been working late in his office when he heard Tommy crying in his room. It wasn't unusual for Tommy to have occasional nightmares, but this sounded different. It was the deep, heartbroken sobbing of a child who missed his mother. Michael started to get up to check on him, but then he heard Maria's voice through the baby monitor. She was singing a lullaby in Spanish, her voice soft and soothing. As he listened, he realized she was crying too. That's when he made the decision that would change everything. He decided to install a few discreet security cameras around the apartment, not because he didn't trust Maria, but because he wanted to understand what was happening when he wasn't there. He needed to know if Tommy was truly happy or if he was just putting on a brave face for his father. What Michael discovered over the next few days through those security feeds was something he never could have imagined. Every morning at 5 a.m., while Michael was still asleep, Maria would wake up and spend an hour preparing for Tommy's day. She would organize his clothes, prepare his breakfast, and set up activities that would challenge him and help him develop his other senses. She created tactile learning games using household items, teaching him math through textures and shapes. But that wasn't what brought tears to Michael's eyes. Maria had been sleeping on the floor next to Tommy's bed every single night. The expensive guest suite Michael had provided remained untouched because she wanted to be close enough to comfort Tommy whenever he had nightmares about his mother. Through the cameras, Michael watched as Maria would wake up instantly whenever Tommy stirred in his sleep. She would gently stroke his hair and whisper reassuring words until he settled back down. She never complained, never showed any sign of frustration or fatigue. During the day, Michael watched Maria take Tommy on adventures around the penthouse. She had created an entire sensory learning environment for him. She taught him to cook simple meals by identifying ingredients by smell and texture. She had him help with laundry so he could learn to identify his own clothes. She even set up obstacle courses using pillows and furniture to help him develop his spatial awareness and confidence in moving around. But the moment that truly broke Michael's heart came on a day when Tommy asked Maria why his mommy had to go to heaven. Through the security feed, Michael watched as Maria sat down next to Tommy and held him close. She explained that sometimes God needs the most special people to become angels, and that's why he chose Tommy's mommy. She told him that his mother was still watching over him every day, and that she had sent Maria to take care of him because she knew Maria would love him almost as much as she did. Then Tommy asked the question that shattered Michael's heart, "Do you love me like my mommy did?" Without hesitation, Maria replied, "Mijo, I love you more than all the stars in the sky. You are the most precious gift God has ever given me to take care of." That's when Michael realized something that made him ashamed of his own blindness. Maria wasn't just Tommy's nanny. She had become his second mother. But the revelation that changed everything came the next day. Michael had decided to come home early from work to spend time with Tommy, something he realized he hadn't done enough of lately. As he walked through the front door, he heard voices coming from the living room. He quietly approached and saw Maria sitting with Tommy at the coffee table, surrounded by papers and what looked like textbooks. As he got closer, he realized what he was seeing. Maria was studying. She had books about child psychology, visual impairment, and special education spread across the table. Tommy was sitting next to her, playing with tactile learning toys while she took notes. "What's all this?" Michael asked, making his presence known. Maria looked up, startled. For the first time since he'd known her, she looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry, Mr. Harrison. I hope you don't mind. I've been taking online courses in my free time to learn more about how to help Tommy. I want to make sure I'm doing everything I can to support his development." Michael stared at her in disbelief. "You're going back to school? For Tommy?" "Yes, sir. I'm working toward a master's degree in special education with a focus on visual impairment. I know I should have asked permission to use the internet for my classes, and I promise it doesn't interfere with taking care of Tommy. I only study after he goes to sleep and before he wakes up." That's when Michael understood why Maria never seemed to be in her room, why she looked tired some mornings, and why she never took time off. She had been sleeping next to Tommy's bed and then waking up at 3 a.m. to study online before starting her day with his son. "Maria," Michael said, his voice thick with emotion, "why would you do this? I mean, why go to all this trouble?" Maria looked down at Tommy, who was listening intently to their conversation, and then back at Michael. "Because Tommy deserves someone who understands his world. When I first started working with visually impaired children, I thought I knew what I was doing. But every child is different, and Tommy has been through so much loss. I realized that if I was going to be the person responsible for his happiness and development, I needed to be the best I could possibly be. Not just for you, but for him. She paused, wiping away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. And because I love him. I know that might sound strange since I'm just his nanny, but from the moment I met Tommy, he felt like the son I never had. Every day I wake up grateful that I get to be part of his life. Michael felt his own eyes welling up with tears. Here was a woman who was earning less than many of his employees, yet she was investing her own time, energy, and what little money she had into becoming better at caring for his son. She wasn't doing it for recognition, promotion, or additional pay. She was doing it out of pure love. That night, after Tommy had gone to bed, Michael sat down with Maria for the most important conversation of his life. "Maria, I need to tell you something. I installed security cameras in the apartment a few weeks ago." Maria's face went pale. "Sir, if I did something wrong, No," Michael interrupted. "You did everything right. More right than I ever could have imagined." He took a deep breath before continuing. "I saw you sleeping on the floor next to Tommy's bed. I saw you studying at 3 in the morning. I saw you create an entire world of learning and love for my son. I saw you give him something I didn't even realize he was missing." Maria looked confused. "What do you mean?" "Hope. Joy. A sense of security that he hasn't had since his mother died. You gave him a mother's love when I was too busy being his father to realize that's what he needed most." Tears were flowing freely down both of their faces now. "I want to ask you something," Michael continued, "and I want you to know that there's no wrong answer. Would you consider staying with us permanently? Not as a nanny, but as family. I want to pay for your education, give you a real room in this house, and most importantly, I want Tommy to know that he has someone who will never leave him." Maria was quiet for a long moment, processing what Michael was saying. "Mr. Harrison, I would be honored to be part of Tommy's family. But I have to ask you something in return. Anything. I want you to be part of his life too. Tommy needs his father just as much as he needs me. Your love means everything to him, even if he doesn't always know how to express it." That was the moment Michael realized that Maria hadn't just been caring for Tommy. She had been trying to give them both what they needed to heal as a family. Over the following months, their dynamic changed completely. Michael reduced his work hours to spend more time at home. He started joining Maria and Tommy for their daily learning activities. He learned Braille so he could read bedtime stories to his son. Most importantly, he learned to see his son's blindness not as a limitation, but as a different way of experiencing the world. Maria finished her master's degree with Michael's support, graduating with honors. She moved into a beautiful suite in the penthouse that became truly hers. More than that, she became Tommy's second mother and Michael's closest friend and co-parent. 2 years later, Tommy started at a mainstream school with special accommodation support. On his first day, both Michael and Maria walked him to class. As they watched him confidently navigate the hallway with his white cane, greeting other children with a bright smile, Michael turned to Maria. "You know, I used to think that money could solve any problem. I thought that if I just paid enough, I could buy Tommy the care he needed. And now?" Maria asked. "Now I know that the most valuable things in life can't be bought. Love, dedication, sacrifice, these things can only be given freely. And you gave them to a little boy who needed them more than anything else in the world." Maria smiled. "We both did, Michael. We both did." As they watched Tommy disappear into his classroom, ready to take on the world with confidence and joy, Michael realized that sometimes the greatest gifts come in the most unexpected packages. Maria had entered their lives as an employee, but she had become something far more precious, the heart of their family. That evening, as the three of them sat together at dinner, Tommy suddenly announced, "I want to tell you both something." "What's that, buddy?" Michael asked. "I know my first mommy is in heaven watching over me. But I also know that God sent me a second mommy to take care of me here. And the best part is, now my daddy is happy again too." In that moment, Michael understood that healing doesn't always come in the form we expect. Sometimes it comes in the form of a gentle woman from Texas who loves a little boy so much that she sleeps on the floor next to his bed and studies in the early morning hours just to be worthy of caring for him. Sometimes it comes in the form of pure, selfless kindness. This story reminds us that in a world that often feels divided and harsh, there are still people who choose love over convenience, sacrifice over comfort, and family over everything else. Maria didn't just care for Tommy, she showed a father how to love his son and a little boy how to believe in himself. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that kindness still exists in this world. Subscribe to Pure Kindness Stories for more inspiring tales that celebrate the beautiful moments when ordinary people do extraordinary things out of love. Because in the end, these are the stories that matter most, the ones that remind us that humanity's greatest strength lies not in what we achieve, but in how we care for one another.